Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Gregory Wright Show. We live, y'all. Right? So, been a couple of days, but back at it. Today, we are going to compare and contrast the tale of two missile strikes. One came from an unmanned drone, and another one came from machinery built to kill people manned by troops and airmen. And so one president got treated by the mainstream media with kid gloves on, while the other is on the borderline of being impeached. And the the contrast couldn't be more stark, right? I'm trying to really find words to describe this, right? This is kind of like my cold open. I don't have any fancy music or videos and stuff like that. I have zero viewers at this time, so I guess I can go as slow or as fast as I want to go. But do me a favor, there's three things that you can do that's for free. You can like, share, subscribe this video so that you can prompt the YouTube algorithm to spread my message to folks who may not have access to this type of information. They may not have access to this type of information, not at all, especially at the local level. Well, these narco boat missile strikes, and then President Obama's 12 years ago um, unmanned aerial strikes, both were an attempt to secure our nation's borders. Excuse me. Secure our nation's borders. One is getting high scrutiny. Well, both of them got scrutiny, but the scrutiny level on one president is way higher than the scrutiny that the other president got for basically doing worse with his missile strikes. But we'll get into it, right? First, so if you don't know what I'm talking about, right, is as my thumbnail suggests, that I'm comparing and contrasting President Trump's narco boat missile strike to President Obama's unmanned aerial vehicle strike in different areas of the world, all in the defense of our U.S. nation. And as long as both presidents were operating within legal authority, because guess what? President Obama, his some of his unmanned drone strikes killed non-combatant civilians, as the description in my video suggests. It's true. It doesn't suggest anything. It says Americans and non-combatants were killed during President Obama's unmanned aerial strikes, while President Trump's missile strikes are actually striking uh, terrorist organizations. No non combatant or American casualties have been reported as of now, but we're going to get into it. We're going to get into it. If you've been with me any length of time, you know that I lean Republican, but I mean, I really should classify myself as an independent because I go with the type of policies that work for me, and some of those policies may come from the Democratic Party. Who knows? Who knows? I'm trying to think of where I want to start first. Let's start with this guy, right? I mean, he has the face of a winner. He has the face of a winner. Let's start with him. This is Trump's White House rock. Looks like war crime, says General, while Trump's Pentagon chief spirals. Now, that kind of headline wasn't. I mean, I did a limited search, probably about 30 minutes, about the Obama unmanned aerial strikes. The headlines used to describe what President Obama did came nowhere near this. Again, they were treating President Obama with kid gloves on. Well, let's get into the video. This is a video critiquing Trump's or President Trump's effort to secure the United States.
Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth remains under fire over these reports of a possible war crime tonight. Video of that infamous second strike, which killed the survivors, is still being hidden by the administration. NBC reports Admiral Frank Bradley, who oversaw the attack, has told lawmakers that they concluded the boat was not actually heading to the United States at all, that it was going towards a South American country, and the alleged drugs on the boat were actually intended for a different continent, possibly Europe or Africa, but not the U.S. NBC has two U.S. officials and one person familiar with the briefings on that point, which of course explodes the entire rationale for the U.S. doing anything to that boat. Would expect, at a minimum, a review of the intelligence, and then also questions about whether the United States was in the right legal or moral position to kill all those people if it had nothing to do with our country. Bradley said Hegseth ordered the military to kill all 11 people. There was an internal list of that the U.S. has of what they believe are narco-terrorists, and thus they could be lethally targeted. That echoes the drone war era, where decisions made in Washington on paper quickly become a rationale for killing without any trial or process. Quote, while the survivors were not armed, Bradley said the mission identified the drug rationale for killing without any, where decisions made in Washington on paper quickly echoes the drone war era that the U.S. has of what they believe are narco-terrorists, and thus they could be lethally targeted. That echoes the drone war era, where decisions made in Washington on paper quickly become a to kill all those people if it had nothing to do with our country. Bradley said Hegseth ordered the military to kill all 11 people. There was an internal list of that the U.S. has of what they believe are narco-terrorists, and thus they could be lethally targeted. That echoes the drone war era, where.
So, I just want to comment real quick. Just trying to. This happened. This video was posted 4 hours ago. So, assuming today, or at least during the weekend, after I would say after September 2nd, right? So that's a long time ago. Even if it was posted last week or whatever, it still echoes the the far left Democrat talking point about how Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, actually told the admiral in charge of the strike, actually told the admiral in charge of the strike to kill them all. And the admiral came back and said, the secretary didn't say that. The New York Times came out with a timeline debunking the Washington Post fake story on how Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, did say kill them all, like he's some daggone villain and stuff. You know, I mean, whose side is the mainstream media on anyway? I mean, wouldn't you want people who are intentionally bringing in drugs into the United States or to our allied countries for the purpose of using those drugs to sedate, brainwash, destroy, and even kill users, especially if it's a speck of fentanyl, especially if it's a speck of fentanyl. But what this news anchor said about the kill 'em all order, Pete Hegseth never made that comment to the general that prompted the second strike. The New York Times debunked it with a timeline last week. The Washington Post was lying. This is another Russia hoax. Um, find me more votes. Jeannie, Carol, no proof of sexual misconduct. She couldn't even remember the dates. I mean, all these trumped up charges, no pun intended. But it just seems to be backfiring. And it's up to this is the reason why I need you to do those three free things for me, because a lot of people around the world are not getting exposed to my content or content from other fellow YouTube creators that really put things into context. Let's go. I'm gonna start this whole thing over again. I am so sorry. I'm in a talkative mood.
Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth remains under fire over these reports of a possible war crime tonight. Video of that infamous second strike, which killed the survivors, is still being hidden by the administration. NBC reports Admiral Frank Bradley, who oversaw the attack, has told lawmakers that they concluded the boat was not actually heading to the United States at all, that it was going towards a South American country, and the alleged drugs on the boat were actually intended for a different continent, possibly Europe or Africa, but not the U.S. NBC has two U.S. officials and one person familiar with the briefings on that point, which of course explodes the entire rationale for the U.S. doing anything to that boat. Would expect at a minimum a review of the intelligence, and then also questions about whether the United States was in the right legal or moral position to kill all those people if it had nothing to do with our country. Bradley said Hegseth ordered the military to kill all 11 people. There was an internal list of that the U.S. has of what they believe are narco-terrorists, and thus they could be lethally targeted. That echoes the drone war era, where decisions made in Washington on paper quickly become a rationale for killing without any trial or process. Quote, while the survivors were not armed, Bradley said the mission identified the drugs as the threat to the U.S. Just imagine how expansive a kill authorization could be if you accept that. This is why we have laws of war. And again, we're not yet at war with this country. But if you can say that drugs, which of course are perhaps sadly trafficked all over the world, are the rationale as the threat, and it doesn't matter whether they're coming to the U.S.
Brother, if you have to stretch that hard, I mean, you're not really making sense to me. The only thing that this brother, this news anchor is saying is that he has Trump derangement syndrome, and he is going to stretch himself into a pretzel to make his viewers believe that all of what he's saying is true. These guys operate on intelligence. These guys operate on intelligence. And a decorated Navy SEAL in charge of this operation on behalf of the Trump administration is not going to slander the president or embarrass the president or give him a black eye, especially when he was operating within the confines of his command. So this guy is stretching real hard into a pretzel to convince his viewers that what the Trump administration is doing to eliminate drug distribution is wrong. If you're an idiot, you probably believe that. I mean, let's continue. Let's continue. Right.
laws of war. And again, we're not yet at war with this country. But if you can say that drugs, which of course are perhaps sadly trafficked all over the world, are the rationale as the threat, and it doesn't matter whether they're coming to the U.S., and the people on board don't have to be attacking the U.S., but that threat allows you to kill a bunch of people without declaring war or having a trial or doing intelligence, well, That's a license to kill everywhere. The Atlantic also has reporting about the second video. Apparently, these lawmakers and a couple service members have been able to see. It discusses footage of the two men's desperate final moments, which made some viewers nauseous, leading one to nearly vomit. Again, you don't know until you've seen it how it might feel to watch someone who could be, again, we haven't seen the video, a protected survivor pleading for help, holding wreckage in the ocean, then being blown to smithereens. Hegseth continues, but will not say that what they will do about this video, which, if it is valid or helps their case, you would expect they would want it released.
From what I understood then and what I understand now, I fully support that strike. I would have made the same call myself.
President Trump said he would have no problem if the full video of the strike is released. When can we see that video? When will you release it?
We're reviewing it right now.
These are defenses that don't really wash. They release the videos they think help them. They hide the videos that they think hurt them. And then they say that they're reviewing it. I mean, it's all part of one operation, obviously. The hiding leads to the scrutiny.
The only point that this dude is making is that he is in favor of narco-terrorism. Why would you create a whole segment on beating up the Trump administration for wanting to protect this nation? Why would you do that? I just don't understand. I don't understand that. I mean, I do understand it because this guy's got Trump the Ranger syndrome, right? The whole network does. MS Now, the whole network. That's the reason why they had to change their name. They had to change their name from MSNBC to MS Now, meaning that MSNBC is a thing in the past. And MS Now is the thing of the now and future. But you got to understand that they're using the same old crappy rhetoric. It's not going to work.
And concerns of a cover-up of a war crime alleged. Republicans who viewed the video, we should note, have defended the strike, so there may be some partisan difference there or just a difference on viewing the evidence. There is, however, growing concern. Releasing part of the video, but not the key part, is a strange strategy for them. And now there's a push to have lawmakers with specific orders behind the attacks get the unedited video. Here's Senator Schiff.
Constitutional, and killing two people who are shipwrecked at sea is also morally repugnant. If the Pentagon and our defense secretary is so...
Nobody should believe what Adam Schiff has to say because he's a liar. He lied about the Russia hoax with Trump and the Trump campaign. He lied about January 6th. Come on, man. You can't believe this guy. And he's under investigation for mortgage fraud in California.
Proud of what they're doing. Where can people see two people standing on a capsized boat or sitting on a capsized boat and deliberately killed and decide for themselves whether they're proud of what the country is doing?
That's a fair request and standard. And a lot's changed in our life and politics. Lots changed in how people get information. We know all that. But this is an important issue that is clearly breaking through across the country because it touches on core questions that haven't changed because of the internet or the MAGA era. A lot of people have connections to the military in our country. You got a lot of military households, a lot of other people who interact with the military, a lot of people who have a family member or an ancestor who served bravely. And there is both pride and recognition of what our military can be and how it should be. And if there is a belief, or here we have reports and evidence, that the politicians who have come in are changing things and putting the military in harm's way or demanding it do things of which it should not do, banned by the Uniform Code of Military Justice, executing shipwreck survivors, as some of the accounts report, a lot of people think that's a big problem. And just playing tough or saying this is how it is now or this is MAGA is not cutting it. We also know the issue's breaking through because everybody's heard about it and it's become a national kind of punchline, even amidst the grim background.
Where is your proof? You spent 15, 20 minutes on this segment already. Where's your proof that any wrongdoing took place? Where was your proof of the Trump campaign colluding with Russian people, Russians, whatever, Russian diplomats or whatever the case is? Where was the proof? It was all a lie. You guys fried General Flynn over nothing, right? They lied on him. James Comey lied on him. See, you mainstream media folks, y'all need to get your act together, man. I can't even stand watching this joint anymore. To be honest with you, we're almost through.
This is how it is now, or this is MAGA, is not cutting it. We also know the issue's breaking through because everybody's heard about it and it's become a national kind of punchline, even amidst the grim background. Saturday Night Live making fun of the country's defense secretary.
I am not listening to that. That is crazy, is irrelevant. You have to include comedy in your segment about serious allegations about Pete Hegseth and President Trump's administration creating war crimes, and you're stretching yourself into a pretzel, Mr. Man, and you refer to no proof, hearsay, and you're referring to a Saturday Night Live skit to prove your point. This is ridiculous. It's ridiculous, man. Let's see how they treated Obama when he let's see how they treated Obama during 11, 12 years ago, when his unmanned aerial vehicle killed non-combatants. A lot of them. We'll get into that too. A lot of them. Let's see how the media, and I also have to put in the context that the mainstream media wasn't as vicious as they are now. And I believe yeah, that's a true statement. I don't think they're as they are now. That's number one. Number two, the media and most of the public loved Obama. Obama was the Messiah. Everybody liked him. He got treated with kid gloves on when it came to the mainstream media. Barack Hussein Obama. That's right. That's right. Now, I believe that if Barack Obama was president today and he conducted unmanned aerial strikes that killed non-combatants and Americans, at least one American, they would not, with the media as fierce as they are today, in the day of Trump, this story would be buried. Or at the very least, President Obama today would be treated again with kid gloves on, and there wouldn't be any impeachment proceedings. I'm pretty sure of that. There wouldn't be any talk about impeachment. It would just be, oh yeah, you're defending our nation, and there's collateral damage when you do that. I think that's bullshit.
Bring in Mustafa Qadri. He's Amnesty International's Pakistan researcher. And Jeremy Bash, who was the chief of staff to Defense Secretary Leon Panetta. He's now the founder and managing director of Beacon Global Strategies, a national defense advisory firm. Mustafa, I'll get to you in a second, but Jeremy, just a quick reaction to the Amnesty report or the human rights one. I mean, they seem to be fairly diligent reports on clear civilian casualties.
Thanks for having me, Jake. Well, like Mustafa and like the authors of the report, I wish we lived in a world without terrorism. I wish we lived in a world without training camps. I wish we lived in a world without the leaders of al-Qaeda. But that's not the world we live in. And so the question really for the United States is, how do we go after terrorists who hide in areas where we can't send in tanks, where we can't send in special forces, where we can't barrage the camps with artillery? And so we've developed a very precise, very effective weapon that can take out terrorists before they plot attacks against us. I definitely dispute the characterizations that civilians have been targeted or that they've been killed en masse. In fact, in every operation that I'm aware of, I would say that if the ironclad rule is that if a non-combatant was there, if a woman or a child was there, no operation would proceed. And our operators are very diligent, and this weapon is very, very...
So what happened? Because it's fact that civilians got killed. So what happened? You saying all that? Civilians. So he's basically, this guy is from the Obama administration. Leon Panetta, I think, was the Secretary of Defense. He's saying that Jake Tapper is lying about civilian casualties. Now, Jake Tapper has been known throughout the decades of being a liar, but I 12 years ago, I just don't think that Jake Tapper would have said what he said, because the media was more moderate back then. It didn't get crazy until Trump took office. And then here you got this guy, chief of staff to the Secretary of Defense, pushing back. Let's see what Jake Tapper does.
precise.
Mustafa?
Yeah, look, I mean, you seem like someone that I can trust, but the problem is right now all I can do is trust you. We've looked at least 2 cases where a grandmother was killed, civilians were killed, laborers, including a young boy. There may be others. The problem is right now there's no accountability. So we have to open that up. At least in these cases, we've documented them very diligently, as you say. The authorities must explain. President Obama has to explain, why have these people been targeted? What kind of threat do they pose to the United States?
Well, explain what you mean by accountability. You think that, I mean, because these are obviously top secret strikes, you don't think that they should explain who they're going to hit before they hit them?
No, certainly in these sort of cases where clearly you're talking about civilians, clearly people who are not a threat to the United States. You know, at a minimum, the US should explain, how did this happen? Why did it happen? Who was the target? And if there has been, as we are saying, a human rights violation, potentially extrajudicial executions or war crimes, someone needs to be investigated. We're not talking about every single drone strike, but what we're saying is that at the moment there has not been a satisfactory explanation in law or fact to justify this whole program.
And in fact, I should point out that both of these reports from Amnesty and Human Rights Watch detail strikes in which al-Qaeda, in the cases of Yemen, and Taliban, in the cases of Pakistan, individuals, militants, or terrorists, whatever you want to call them, were struck and were killed, but they also talk about civilians as well. Mustafa, White House Press Secretary Jay Carney was asked about the reports today. I want to play you what he said and get your reaction.
To the extent these reports claim that the U.S. has acted contrary to international law, we would strongly disagree. We take mindful of the absolute need to limit civilian casualties and to, in this case, reach a standard of near certainty that no civilians will be killed or injured, which is the highest standard we or any country could set.
Your reaction?
Well, I mean, look, if the US claims that these are not illegal, unlawful strikes, give us the evidence. Give us the legal explanation for how you justify killing a grandmother in front of her grandchildren. How do you explain killing a young 14-year-old boy
They can't.
in such a poor village?
They
had to be a
can't.
laborer in a mine at that age? How do you explain those killings?
Jeremy, when U.S. troops kill civilians, presumably accidentally in Afghanistan or Iraq, there's a process under which these individuals can be compensated to a degree. I think one of the points that is being made here is because the justification for these drone strikes is kept top secret, there's no way for these people to seek any sort of redress for their grievances.
Well, that's a fair point, and I think that's something that we should think about. But I think we should also think about the way these operations are conducted. And that is, first of all, they're all on video. And that actually promotes accountability. That allows us to take that video and show it to members of Congress who oversee these operations. And in every single one of these operations, they have been briefed to our Congress, and they have been briefed to those who oversee the operations, and they can actually see the video. The second thing that's important about the way these operations are conducted is that up to the very last moment, they can be called off. And I'm personally aware of operations where a woman or a child has walked into.
Okay, so again, this guy is he's an Obama representative, and he's being treated. Jake Tapper from CNN. I can't believe how many years he worked for CNN. But Jake Tapper is treating this guy, Jeremy Bash, with kid gloves on. I mean, from the looks of his title, Beacon Global Strategies, he looks like he is advising the current administration on war tactics or whatever, or policy. But he did serve with Leon Panetta. He did serve under the Obama administration, and it's his job to defend Barack Hussein Obama's misstep in killing civilians. Right? Nothing happened to him. No impeachment, no dragging through the mud for years and years and years about what he did. But Trump, for some reason, targeting narco boat terrorists from bringing in drugs in either into the United States or our allied countries. It doesn't really matter. Let's get it.
To the shot,
I'm
if
not
you
going to
will,
go too long,
and
y'all.
actually the weapon has been diverted. I don't know any other country, Jake, that would do that. No other country would take that level of care. Now, this is combat, and there have been several hundred operations. Have there been individuals who are not combatants who have been killed? President Obama has acknowledged that there have been. But that's not our purpose, that's not our tactic, and I think we try to do the best we can to prevent civilian casualties while protecting the United States.
Mustafa, did you want to?
Yeah, look, I mean, the problem again is this issue of that we have to trust these people. We don't challenge the fact that they are very professional, very mindful, thoughtful people working in these organizations. But we can't just take the word of people. It's like you said yourself, if someone commits a crime or if someone is, say, a police officer in the heat of a moment kills someone, there is an investigation. It potentially goes to the court. There needs to be that kind of, level of accountability. I agree with you. The U.S. often has very high standards in terms of investigation. The U.S. is the world's superpower. The world looks to the U.S. I come from Pakistan. We are a country which has a lot of...
And I got to tell you that I was searching for where mainstream media goes ham on Barack Obama for, in collateral damage and protecting this nation. The collateral damage is striking non-combatants and Americans. This is the only adverse video that I can find. And that video that I just turned off is very mild in criticism of Barack Hussein Obama. Very mild criticism of compared to Trump. But you also have to look at and compare and contrast the two videos I just played for you. The first video on MS Now, you saw the whole stretching himself into a pretzel and saying things that were not true, that were debunked by the New York Times last week. Relying on hearsay. He wasn't part of those briefs that the Admiral gave. He wasn't a fly on the wall when members of Congress was talking about the subject matter. And then the host from MS Now had to refer to a Saturday Night Live skit making fun of Pete Hegseth and the Trump administration. That was a wasted segment, folks. Hey, if you just joining us, hey, stick to the end. I'm about to get into the meaty portion of the video. We're live. Welcome to the Gregory Wright Show. I saw one viewer pop up. He may disappear. I can't see. I can't see your name. So if you're curious or whatever, just stay on. I'm still going. 35 minutes in. You missed a lot, so you may want to rewind the show and catch what I'm saying. But comparing and contrasting tale of two missile strikes. One missile strike killed innocent civilians. The other missile strike didn't. And who's receiving more scrutiny? It's President Trump. When Barack Obama mistakenly killed innocent civilians in his drone strikes, he got pushback, but it was like a soft push. They trying to they trying to do another Butler, Pennsylvania on Trump for doing way less than Obama did, right? So you got this guy twisting himself up in the pretzel and relying on Saturday Night Live, who made fun uh, of Trump and Pete Hegseth. Then you have a slight pushback and treating with kid gloves on. You got slight pushback from the Pakistani that was because he wasn't backing down. And then you got Jake Tapper twisting himself into a pretzel to protect the former chief of staff of Leon Panetta, who was the Secretary of Defense during the Obama administration. Jake Tapper twisting himself up into a pretzel, protecting or shielding that guy from real criticism. This is not what I'm talking about right here. Let me see. All right, I'm gonna stop showing videos and I'm just gonna get into a quick analysis, and I am gonna read the entire thing to you. Okay, the comparison between former President Barack Obama's drone strikes during 2009 2017 and President Donald Trump's narco boat missile strikes 2025 highlights two distinct U.S. military campaigns using lethal force outside traditional battlefields. Obama's program focused on counterterrorism via unmanned aerial vehicles, drones, while Trump's Operation Southern Spear targets alleged drug trafficking vessels with missile strikes, framing them as narco terrorism. Both have drawn scrutiny for legality, civilian risk, and effectiveness. No, they haven't. Not civilian risk. Well, civilian risk, but one operation had more civilian risk than the other and effectiveness, but they differ in scale, targets, and methods. Obama strikes were part of a long term strategy inherited and expanded from the Bush era, whereas Trump's are a recent escalation in the Western Hemisphere amid his administration's focus on border security and drug interdiction. Key comparison table, right? So on the left hand side, you have, let me make myself disappear real quick so you guys could see the entire thing. So on the left hand column, this is Obama's drone strikes, and then in the right hand column is Trump's narco boat missile strikes. And so you will see as I scroll down, the headings for these two columns are going to disappear, but you just have to be mindful that the left side is Obama. Let me write that down now. All right, just an easy reminder for me so I'm not so choppy, right? Primary targets. I mean, terrorism, right? I don't need to read that. Primary targets, terrorism. Methods. Obama used unmanned drones and Trump used manned aircraft. Pretty simple. Number of strikes. Obama had 563 strikes across at least two or three different countries. Trump had about 22 strikes this year, spanning two countries. Casualties. Obama, remember, this is Obama's little block right here. Total killed, roughly 3,800. To include 64 to 116 civilians. There's independent contractors or people who are independent of the Obama administration that say that 400 to 800 plus civilians, including children and women, and signature strikes based on suspicious behavior. Right? There's no way that this would be on the internet if it was a lie. Now, there's things on the internet that are about Trump that's a lie, but it's later debunked. This casualty estimate right here under Obama was never debunked. Under Trump, total killed 87. All claimed as narco terrorists with no acknowledged civilians, however, no evidence of drugs. So when they speak about Obama, they don't say no evidence or whatever. But when they speak about Trump, they say, yeah, no evidence that this ever. But there are no civilians killed during the recent narco boat strikes. Somebody within the Trump administration, somebody within the Department of War who is a defector would have already leaked that information if it occurred. If innocent civilians were killed. No such leaks occurred, ma'am. Let's get to the controversy. Under Obama, high civilian casualties, strikes on weddings and homes. You heard that correctly. President Obama struck weddings and homes of civilians in the countries that they were targeting. Lack of transparency. Obama released partial data in 2016. Extrajudicial killings, blowback fueling radicalization, defended as precise alternative to ground troops. Under Trump, Today, the mainstream media and members of Congress are accusing or alleging Pete Hegseth committed war crimes. No public evidence of drugs. Well, maybe they have secret or top secret evidence, but it has to be vetted and released for public consumption, right? All of this took place this year. You can't expect things to happen that fast, do you? Bipartisan calls for video release and memos, lawsuits for transparency. There was no lawsuit under Barack Hussein Obama for lack of transparency. You see, compare and contrast. Compare and contrast. Lawsuits for transparency. Trump administration defends as necessary for homeland security. That's what both these missions were about. The unmanned and the manned aircraft striking areas of the world to prevent, to stop terrorism for U.S. homeland security. That's what it means. But both presidents were treated differently by Congress and the mainstream media. I'll continue to drive that point home. Right? Like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Share the content of this video because this is the only way that it's going to reach people in flyover country, in the Midwest, in Mississippi, in New York, where all they see is local news and they giving them the weather and traffic reports. That's not what they need to see, because in between the weather and the traffic reports, they receive a little slither of Trump derangement syndrome from people who are invited on these shows, and they say whatever they want about our current president with no pushback from the news hosts, no real journalism going on. So I'm attempting through open source media to uh, bring you both sides of the story. And I did it under 50 minutes. I was a little long winded, but I really appreciate your patronage and I want your support. I need your support. But if you don't want to support, I'm okay with that too. But it was good being with y'all. Thanks for spending your time with me. And if you stumble across this video and not part of my live, that's fine too. Watch the video all the way to the end while you're doing laundry and you washing dishes or you cooking and you got your ear pods in. Hey, take a listen. You may learn something. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.